I don't know. Hi, everyone. Hope you're well tonight. I'm doing well, feeling good as anyone can feel in this particular situation. And hi, Dolores. Hi, Stephanie. Thanks for sharing, Dolores. And thanks for sharing, Stephanie. And Steve. How are you, Steve? That is Stephen Wolfbrand. And Carmen. Nice to see you. Whistle or something so that newbies know you're on. Thank you. I should have done that before, right? Steve DeVore says, I made it on time tonight. Thanks, Avril. Steve Wolfbrand says, I'm trying to watch Paula Jean at the same time. I understand. And by the way, how is Paula Jean doing? I see Bernie has a fundraiser out for her and Marquita Bradshaw at the same time, which I think is a good idea. They could certainly use all the money they can get. Steve Gonzo says an officer is down, okay, in Louisville. Well, sorry to hear that. That can't be good. That can't be good. Trump is just going to fulminate and go nuts and crazy, and everybody's going to go crazy. And uh, it's all crazy. Anyway, there's a lot of crazy rage going on right now. All we're seeing is crazy rage, and we're going to go through some of the happenings tonight, and we're going to go through the escalating rage that everybody is feeling. And anyway, we're going to go through it all. By the way, I early voted today, and so did Bonnie. So that's cool, I think. Over 170 environmentalists signed letter urging against Green Party protest vote. I mean to share that with you. It's from Truth Out. Let me share that one. Oh, shit. Sorry, I thought I hit the wrong button and stopped my stream, but I did not. So the result is that I have an infrequent cuss word on my stream. Here you go, though. It's being shared now. I don't usually cuss too much on stream, but I'm sure you'll forgive me in this instance. Over 170 environmentalists have signed a letter urging against the Green Party protest vote, quote unquote. And there's a picture of Howie Hawkins running for governor on the Green Party ticket on October 27, 2010 at the Bowling Green Bowl in New York, and you see Howie there. He looks like he was a little more well-fed than he seems today, somehow. But they're pulling down the bull.
All I've got is your little green thing on.
Well, it seems to be okay, as far as I can tell.
Okay.
And let me tune into the stream and see if anybody else is having a problem. No, I seem to be okay. Alfred says, I was just watching a bit of the Pavlina and Mark Cuban piece on YouTube. He's so deeply entrenched in profit, he's just finding every little excuse to dismiss the FJG with his business yapping. He's so deep into the matrix, we need much more than Neo. Kay says, hi, well. Avril says, hi, Kaya. Okay, back to the piece. Starting the piece, really. This story is by Candace Byrne of Truth Out. It was filed on September 21st, 2020, and the story is part of Covering Climate Now, a global journalism collaboration strengthening coverage of the climate story. So the Green Party is fighting in court to stay on the ballot in key swing states, and it's 40 days before the election, and many veteran environmental activists and climate scientists are taking an unprecedented step, pleading to a constituency that has long been key to the Green Party's electoral efforts to eschew casting a, quote, protest vote, unquote, for the Greens this year, and instead cast their ballots for Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden. So why would they do that? Why would they do that? They signed a letter arguing that the planetary stakes are simply too high to risk a third-party vote that could tip the presidential election in President Trump's favor. They argue that it happened in 2000 and 2016. I certainly don't agree that it happened in either of those cases. In other words, in the year 2000, it wasn't the case that the election was swung to Bush in 2000 and to Trump in 2016 because the Green Party ran. I know Ralph Nader got a lot of votes, in Florida, but it would have been very, very easy for Al Gore to have picked up Florida and his own state, of Tennessee, if he were running, let's say, on a Medicare for All ticket. In other words, he didn't go out there and get those votes. It should never have been so close. Another stupid thing that Al Gore did in 2000 was that he declined the help of Bill Clinton in the campaign out of moralistic concerns. When Bill Clinton was very, very, very popular and would certainly have gotten him the votes that he needed, probably in his home state as well as in Florida. I mean, Bush should not even have been close. Anyway, the letter incorrectly says, in my view, quote, 20 years ago, the Green Party snatched the White House from a climate change leader and handed it to George W. Bush. I just think that's inaccurate, folks. In Florida, no less than 97,488 progressive voters snubbed Al Gore for Ralph Nader, letting Bush win the state and therefore the presidency by 537 votes, or so the Supreme Court ruled. Well, the Supreme Court did create that particular situation, but that certainly wasn't the fault of the Green Party. Okay. I mean, what the Supreme Court caused is not the fault of the Green Party. There are a dozen factors in 2000 that you could point to, and you could say that's what cost Gore the election. Obviously, if there are a dozen such factors, no one of them cost Gore the election. Winning the election was within Gore's control in the year 2000, and Gore blew it. That is the truth of the matter. And in 2016, Hillary blew it. And of course, the article states Howie Hawkins' objection. And he pointed out no moves were made to get rid of the Electoral College, which is actually what caused the problem in 2000. Where were the Democrats? Why didn't they try to get rid of the Electoral College when they had control of the Congress? Why didn't they do a better job? Why didn't they do a better job of running on actually legislating a progressive platform in 2009 and 2010? If they had, there would have been no Republican victory in Congress. There would have been no blocking by the House of all kinds of good bills that might have occurred. And there would have been no sourness in the 2016 campaign to to cause Hillary Clinton to go down in that particular year. There wouldn't have been a Trump candidacy if the Obama administration had handled it well. I mean, to put this on the Green Party is ridiculous, but still, despite a decade of Green Party campaign efforts, momentum for Green New Deal didn't gain serious traction until 2018. That's right, when Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez joined youth activists with the Sunrise Movement in occupying House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office to demand a Green New Deal that would ensure just a transition to 100% renewable energy in the United States. Next year, Bernie Sanders joined the Representative Ocasio-Cortez in proposing the legislation that would declare climate change a national and international emergency, began campaigning on a Green New Deal, mainstreaming the policy as a serious platform position within the Democratic Party. Since Sanders dropped out of the race, Sunrise Movement activists have worked to move Biden left on climate. In fact, Biden's $2 trillion climate plan, which calls for 100% clean electricity by 2035 and sweeping infrastructure upgrades that would create that would create some millions of new jobs, incorporate several recommendations from a Biden-Sanders Unity Task Force. The plan has won over many Sanders wing environmentalists, including the Sunrise Movement, despite not embracing a Green New Deal or a national fracking ban. Which means the Sanders wing environmentalists and the Sunrise Movement sold themselves out too cheap. They should have required Biden to embrace a Green New Deal if he wanted their support. While Biden's plan would be the most sweeping set of environmental reforms in history, if enacted, it still falls short of scientific guidelines, absolutely, that specify a managed decline of fossil fuel extraction to meet the timeline that the IPCC recommends. Global oil and gas production must fall 37% and 25% respectively this decade to avert planetary warming of more than 1.5 degrees Celsius. Anyway, a green organizer by the name of Hunt, Drake Hunt, an 18-year-old Sunrise Train Hurricane organizer, is deeply disillusioned with, quote, neoliberal establishment, corrupt sellout Biden and the Democratic Party. So disillusioned in fact that he says he was planning to sit out his first election ever. That was until Trump's response to this year's compounding crises made him realize that he faces a choice between climate catastrophe and authoritarianism, or a chance at a habitable planet and a stable democracy, as he puts it. You have to realize that Trump is standing in the way as we have a deadline to cut emissions as a planet. We have to move forward on ambitious climate policy, and what's the best avenue to get there? Is it in a protest vote, unquote? He asked that question, and I have to agree with the implied answer. No, that is not the best thing to do right now. Trump supported the Green Party Stein in 2016 after Sanders failed to secure the nomination to the Democratic Party, and describes his ideology as in line with the Green Party's. He even made a video in support of Stein at the time. He says, I love the Green Party. I love everything they stand for. If this were Europe, we had this parliamentary system where it wasn't just this two-party infrastructure, I'd vote Green Party. And I'm sure most people at Sunrise would as well. But of course, he says we have to be realistic about where we're going to put our efforts. And he says Biden's revised climate plan is proof, he says, the climate movement to extract concessions from his campaign and in all likelihood his potential administration. That may be a little too optimistic. I've been accused of optimism in that respect also today on Twitter. But they did extract it from him in the context of his campaign. But what he says in his campaign and what he'll do when he's president are two different things. But getting him to make a commitment in the campaign is a first step, and that's good. Left unchecked, Hunt says Biden may in all likelihood simply continue the same neoliberal milquetoast policies of the Obama-Biden administration, which embraced an all of the above energy strategy and oversaw a revolving door of energy advisors in the fossil fuel industry. And Bill McKibben, of course, doesn't want a protest vote either. While Hawkins acknowledged he has no chance of winning, he rejected the spoiler argument, saying the party is in fact working to push ranked choice voting in more state legislatures. If they're worried about the center-left vote splitting and electing these right-wing losers, then go to ranked choice voting. I mean, that's a solution. To suppress the Green Party is not a solution. I think Howie Hawkins has a lot going for him there. He really does. I mean, it's far-fetched to say that Biden is going to lose because the Green Party is on the ballot, in various states. If Biden loses, It's because he's not going to Medicare for all, and he's not renouncing free trade agreements, okay, and he's not embracing the Green New Deal. If he loses, it's because he's not getting the young people excited, and it's because he's making statements like he is not a socialist while he attacks Bernie Sanders at the same time. It's those kinds of things that will cause Biden to lose. It's not a few Green Party votes in a relatively few states. It's not a protest vote that's going to cause Joe Biden to lose. Anyway, both parties have been accused of voter suppression, and of course they are engaged in voter suppression. In April of this year, an Emerson poll found 51% of Sanders' primary voters were considering opting for a third party. Well, we were all considering that because at the time we were very, very angry about the rigging and the cheating and the defeat of Sanders through rigging and cheating, which we're all quite sure is what happened. So the Democrats, of course, are suppressing the Green Party vote and hoping that will help them in the general. I don't think it's going to help them in the general. I think the people who were moved by the idea that they had to vote for Biden to get out Trump were going to vote for Biden anyway. And those who don't have the Green Party to vote for are not therefore going to go over and vote for Biden. They're going to leave the top line on their ballots blank because they're angry that they've been suppressed, and they're not going to vote for Biden as a result. Moreover, the Green Party has been accused of the same kind of suppression efforts it charges the Democrats with engaging in. Some candidates that ran in the Green Party's primary alleged the primary was rigged and that the party apparatus forced them out of the race. Well, I haven't heard that, but that's interesting. I'd like to know the details. The party's primary recognition process requires candidates to meet certain signature and donation thresholds, as well as approval from the party's presidential campaign support committee, which some candidates say they can't possibly meet without the resources and connections of the party's old guard. So the Green Party believes that the establishment in the Green Party has been suppressing eco-socialists. That's the basic point here. And they're disillusioned environmental activists like Hunt, and for him the electoral math is just as unforgiving as the math on climate change. And he says, quote, "You have to be completely honest about who is going to achieve power and how you're actually going to move any serious climate action forward," he says. So, it's really interesting that 170 environmentalists have signed a letter urging the Green Party, urging their compatriots not to do protest voting for the Green Party this year. That thing, as far as I know, is unprecedented, and it shows the desire out there to stop Trump. I think that is very clear. So, okay, the next one is from Common Dreams. I'm going to share that one too. And this expresses the sentiment. It was published today, September 23rd. And the headline is warning the, quote, greater evil is simply off the charts, unquote. 50 plus progressive writers and activists pen open letter urging vote for Biden. And this is by Jake Johnson, the very good staff writer for Common Dreams. Here's a picture of Smokey Joe. giving his acceptance speech on the fourth night of the Democratic National Convention on August 20th, 2020. The progressive writers and activists include Noam Chomsky, Barbara Ehrenreich, and Cornel West, among others, and they unveiled an open letter today, this morning, arguing a vote for a Democratic the presidential nominee Joe Biden in November is essential because while, quote, the lesser evil is evil, in this case, the greater evil is simply off the charts, unquote. Citing concerns that Donald Trump could attempt to dispute the results of the election if he loses, the letter states, quote, voting for Biden all over, unquote, including but not merely in swing states could help, quote, ward off post-election Trumpian tactics, unquote, by delivering the former vice president, quote, as big an electoral college margin as possible. I have to say that I don't know how voting for Biden in non-swing states can create as big an electoral college margin as possible. It seems to me that would create as big a popular vote margin as possible. But of course, the winner is not selected based on the popular vote. So it seems to me that the swing state argument still holds. Of course, there's possibility of error. You could, in a swing state, vote for someone other than Biden and misjudge the extent to which it's a swing state. Okay. And so that's a factor. Okay, that's a factor. In other words, a 5-point lead, it's still a swing state. Even a 10-point lead, it might still be a swing state. When you're getting up to a 15-point lead and there's a trend in it and it has been growing over a period of months, things like that, with only 40 days to go, it's unlikely that Trump can win such a state. But so that's not a swing state, but most states aren't there. Most states are not at that point. California and New York, okay, probably, and a few other states as well. But I think a lot of states are still within the 10-point range. So if we use that as a criterion, the number of swing states would still be very large. Quote, the electoral college should be gone. Okay, electoral coercion, okay, and manipulation, okay, misdirection should be gone. Unquote, reads a letter which was published in Common Dreams. And quote again, the need to purchase of visibility should be gone. The Democratic Party candidate should be Bernie Sanders or whoever would inspire your positive support. But none of that will happen by election day. So it undeniably comes down to this: help Biden or increase the risk that Trump is going to win, unquote. And that's basically the argument of it. The news, I don't think the argument is new. I think the news here is that people like Chomsky and Cornel West, okay, and Ehrenreich are assigning their names to this letter. They are afraid. They are afraid of the fascism. They are they're also afraid of Trump's destructive climate, okay, and nuclear weapons policies, his ongoing assault on the judiciary and the democracy, the whole structure, okay, of law, his racism, okay, his sexism, okay, and so on. They say, quote, not voting for Biden in swing states won't bring on a revolution. Not voting for Biden in swing states will not make anyone the slightest bit more progressive, radical, either progressive or radical or revolutionary, unquote, the open letter declares. Quote, so it comes down to this: dump Trump, then battle Biden, vote for Biden at least in swing states and urge others to do so as well, and then get on with building grassroots movement for ongoing fundamental change, unquote. And also maybe alternative parties so we can get a third party in. So we can at least have the choice of voting for a third party where it would not be a futile vote, but the third party might actually win. The letter comes just over a month after progressive advocacy group, rootsaction.org, launched its Vote Trump Out initiative aimed at boost the voting turnout in the key swing states. Chomsky says in the campaign's launch video, quote, another 4 years of Trump may literally lead us to the stage where the survival of organized human society is deeply imperiled, unquote, and quote again, it doesn't matter whether you like Biden or not. That's your personal feelings, irrelevant. Nobody cares about that. What they care about is what happens to the world. We have to get rid of Trump, keep pressure on Biden, just as Sanders and associates have been doing. I don't know how Sanders and his associates have been keeping the pressure on Biden exactly. I don't know whether Biden has felt very much pressure, as indicated by the fact that the other day he attacked Sanders in the course of saying that he wasn't a socialist. I don't mind. He's saying that he's not a socialist and pointing to his record. But he doesn't have to say, I beat the socialist. He doesn't have to do that. He really doesn't. Okay, by the way, I have a video I'm coming out with on that, yet another video on that. Anyway, I'm not going to go through the body of the open letter here. I've quoted enough from it, I think, already. You're getting the point. The important thing is that 50 progressives with names, important, okay, who we would recognize, are coming out and saying, we've got to go for Biden in order to get Trump out. And the names are all here. Okay, Barbara Ehrenreich is a very well-known name, and Avi Chomsky, who I presume is the son of Donald, who's the son, okay, of Noam Chomsky, who teaches at Salem State, okay, in Illinois, okay, is someone, okay, whose name I know, okay, Barbara Ehrenreich, and Brett Wilkins of Common Dreams, and Charlie Lenchner of People for Bernie, Doug Henwood, and Gar Alperovist, okay, and Gregory Wilpert, okay, who works for the Real News Network, as well as being a writer, okay, an activist, and Jeff Cohn, the FAIR founder and the co-leader, okay, of RootsAction.org, and Joe Gerson with the International Peace Bureau, and Juliet Schor, a well-known name, okay, in academia, in sociology, and Karen Now, former chair of the Progressive Caucus of the California Democratic Party, Kathy Kelly, Voices for Creative Nonviolence, and Lisa Featherstone, a well-known feminist. So many of these are well-known people. There's Marjorie Cohn, who writes a lot for Truth Out, who's an activist and a college professor also, and a legal scholar. She's actually a professor emerita. Okay. And also Medea Benjamin from Code Pink. It's surprising she would sign on because in past years she's been a supporter of the Green Party and is a very close associate, okay, of many Green Party people as well. And there, okay, is Norman Solomon, the other co-director, okay, of Roots Action. And also Peter Kuznick, okay, from American University, uh, writes very, very well on how the Cold War got started and on wars, okay, in American history. Altogether, very anti-war guy, very, very well known. So there are very famous people, okay, among the 50, and it's significant that 50 plus of them signed this particular letter. It indicates that people feel very, very strongly that the greater evil is off the charts. And of course, as you know, I feel very strongly about that as well, that the greater evil is simply off the charts. We cannot risk another term, okay, of Trump. Now, I was willing to risk that in 2016. I was willing to risk it in 2016. Things were not as bad then. It wasn't clear that Trump would be as bad as he's been. But now it's 2020, and we see what Trump can do. And we see he has killed 205,000, going on 210,000 of us. And believe me, I attribute most of those deaths to him, as you know, because had he managed COVID-19, okay, in the way Taiwan did, we would have right now only roughly 100 deaths. I think I calculated yesterday 110 deaths. 0.3 per million instead of, how many do we have right now? Let me check this out for you very briefly. We're above 620 deaths per million now. The question is whether we've gotten to 625 yet. I don't know. The table hasn't come crashing in yet. Here it is. We're at 623, not at 625 yet. I guess the returns are all in for today. There were 1,112 new fatalities in the United States, 623 deaths per million. We're at 206,593. Almost certainly we will make 210,000 by the end of the month. Another 7 days, okay, from now. We'll probably go over 210,000 then, okay, according to the Worldometer sites. So that's where we were. We could have been at less than 1,000. If we'd been exactly like Taiwan, we would have lost only 110. I blame what's happened on Trump and the lack of a national plan when he had plenty of time to develop one. I think the greater evil is simply off the charts. Simply off the charts.
I thought there was already a plan in place, and he deleted it.
No, it wasn't a comprehensive national plan. I think what you're talking about, okay, is the pandemic plan, the generalized pandemic plan.
Yeah.
That's not the same thing as a national plan for COVID-19,
Okay.
okay, which is different. It would have been a good starting place for one, but it wasn't that. Okay, it wasn't that. So next, here's Trump. People want to get rid of him. There's a tremendous amount of opposition to him. They want to vote against him. He can tell he's losing, that he very likely will lose, okay, the election. So what does he do? He cheats, right? September 23rd, 2020, Trump openly admits he wants to fill the RBG vacancy before Election Day so his justice can help fight mail-in ballots. He's afraid of the mail-in ballots. This piece was written today by Jake Johnson, Common Dreams. I'm going to share this one too. Uh, and of course, this is very transparent. This someone flashing a sign, no nomination till inauguration. Outside of the office of Senator Cory Gardner in Colorado, Cory Gardner has already announced that he's going to vote to fill the vacancy, and they don't even know who Trump is nominating yet. They haven't had a chance to study the person, to vet the person, anything. All they know is they're going to fill the vacancy. Because Trump wants somebody in there to help him dispute, the legitimacy of mail-in ballots in the November election. And there's a quote from the president there that I'm not going to give you. He says, pushing his nominee through the Senate before Election Day would be a very good thing, quote unquote. And he basically claimed that Democrats are trying to sow confusion and everything else. He's a wonderful projector, isn't he? He's been trying to sow confusion since last spring. And now he claims the Democrats are trying to sow confusion and everything else. More quotes from Trump. More BS. His remarks on Tuesday were his latest attempt to preemptively cast doubt on the results of the November election by lying about mail-in voting, which states nationwide have expanded in response to the ongoing pandemic. As BuzzFeed reported last week, the president's re-election campaign and the National Republican Party are devoting millions of dollars to wage a state-by-state legal battle against mail-in voting during the coronavirus pandemic, not only suing state officials, but also intervening in cases where they aren't a party to limit. I'm not sure that's correctly stated. But also intervening in cases where they aren't a party to limit how Americans can vote from home. With the unprecedented surge of mail-in ballots expected to delay the final election results for days or even weeks, voting rights groups and Democratic lawmakers are growing increasingly concerned that Trump could falsely declare victory on election night or refuse to accept the results if he loses to Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden. Yes, we've been hearing this again and again and again. And Ian Millhiser, formerly of MoveOn, the senior correspondent at Vox now, says, quote, they aren't hiding. They want to confirm a new Trump justice so that justice can steal the election, unquote. And journalist Matt O'Brien said the president is, quote, is like a Bond villain who can't help but tell us about his plan to rig the election, unquote. And quote again, that's telling his supporters to vote in person so he wins the votes that are cast on election day itself, and then suing to stop absentee ballots from being counted, unquote, O'Brien added. Quote, Bush v. Gore is the plan, unquote. Okay, by the way, I went to early vote today in this state because we could do that. And I didn't want to vote by mail because, of course, I didn't want to help Trump. That's it. Okay. Otherwise, I probably would have voted by mail. But since you can't trust the mail at this point, then if you can, the thing to do, obviously, is to early vote in person. Okay, it isn't but too crowded, and we are old enough that we could vote curbside. So it was very convenient. It was not at all crowded. We had to drive somewhere, to do it, but we wore our masks. They wore masks. It was a very nice day. Uh, it worked great. Earlier Tuesday, just before Senator Romney officially assured Senator Mitch McConnell that he's going to have enough votes to move forward with the nominee, Trump tweeted that he will announce his Supreme Court pick on Saturday. Now, there's still something we can do. That is, swing state voters, and Mitt Romney isn't running in his state. So at this point, he is not in any kind, of danger. So he can't be pressured to change his mind. But there are enough contests out there with Republican senators on the bubble, as I have said before, that phone calls and letters and expressed anger can swing some of these people. For example, if Cory Gardner entertains any hope at all of being reelected, he has to provide a commitment right now that he is not going to go along with Trump. Of course, Cory Gardner might think he's screwed whatever way he does, because if he doesn't go with Trump, then all the right-wingers in his state are not going to vote for him. And he's not sure whether Democrats are going to vote for him anyway. So that's probably why he's going with Trump. But, I think he's a loser, in any case. I think more of them are going to turn out to be losers, in this instance, because they're afraid to go against Trump, and they were very dependent in their own states on Trump's base. So they pretty much have to go down to victory. What will happen is that the independents, not in Trump's base, will probably go over to the other side, and we're probably going to see a sweep of the Senate in favor of the Democrats, much more so than was expected beforehand. The current favorites, as you know, are Amy Coney Barrett and Barbara Lagoa, right-wing judges, both viewed as potential threats to Roe v. Wade. And, of course, one thing to do with these judges is you get them in the hearings, inside the Senate, and you ask them specifically about their attitudes to Roe v. Wade. And you get them to say things, you get them to commit. And you note that they're under oath. You get them to commit under oath. And if they lie about it, those are grounds for impeachment. That's it. Got to start impeaching justices for lying during their hearings. President too. Senate Republicans on the Judiciary Committee met midday Tuesday to discuss different scenarios for how quickly they can process the nominee. No final decision was made, but a hearing could take place starting the week of October 12th, according to a GOP aide. By the way, there are a number of ways to delay that, but evidently Nancy Pelosi is not for them because she's hemming and hawing, talking about arrows in her quiver, not saying what the arrows in her quiver are or even hinting what the arrows in her quiver are. But she's just bullshitting, as she usually does when she doesn't intend to do anything. Like what happened with the CARES Act. Exactly what happened with the CARES Act. Next, you can feel the anger. This is by Jake Johnson also. As of today, let me share that. Share screen again. Zip. Got to speed things up a little here, folks. I'm lagging a little behind. You can feel the anger, quote unquote. 18,000 calls to senators in just 24 hours signal widespread outrage over Trump's Supreme Court power grab. People are motivated. In an indication that anger over Trump's efforts to drag the Supreme Court further to the right is widespread, members of the advocacy group Stand Up America made more than 18,000 calls to senators in a single day earlier this week to register their opposition into the GOP's rush to confirm a successor to the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg right before the November election. Sean Eldridge, founder and president of Stand Up, said in a statement Wednesday that, quote, "You can feel the anger from our community in response to the attempt by Trump and Senate Republicans to force through another conservative justice." Stand Up said its members made calls from every state in the United States on Monday, demanding that senators delay the confirmation process until after the winner of the presidential election is inaugurated. Quote, "Our democracy and our fundamental rights are on the line," said Eldridge. And quote again, "After all of their empty rhetoric about letting the American people decide in 2016, Senate Republicans are now trying to ram yet another right-wing justice through the confirmation process. This lifetime appointment to the court could be the deciding vote to overturn the Affordable Care Act and Roe v. Wade or block legislation addressing climate change and gun safety. We cannot and will not let Trump and McConnell pack the Supreme Court without a fight." Polling released in the wake of Ginsburg passing late last week found a majority of Americans believe the winner of the November 3rd presidential election should be the one to fill the new Supreme Court vacancy, a position similar to the one that many Republican senators staked out following the death of conservative Justice Antonin Scalia during the final year of President Obama's second term. But the Senate Republicans who opposed the nomination of Garland in 2016 have since cynically abandoned their objections to confirming a Supreme Court justice in an election year, giving McConnell enough votes to move forward with Trump's coming pick. So, Indivisible is saying, quote, "Call your senators now and demand they refuse to consider any Supreme Court justice until a new president is inaugurated. The American people deserve to have their voice heard in what could shift the courts irreparably for our lifetimes." That could happen, but I doubt it'll be for our lifetimes, because if the American people vote in a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House and a Democratic president, then the least we could do is to pack the courts to shift the majority. Pack the Supreme Court, but I think a lot of other courts should be packed too, because we got terrible packing from Mitch McConnell this time around, and we've got to do something about it, or the whole progressive agenda will be frustrated. Okay, Lindsey Graham is reportedly aiming for hearings on Trump's nominee as soon as October 12th. One Republican Saturday told the Associated Press that a floor vote on the president's pick could take place on October 29th, just days before the presidential election. Christopher Kang, chief counsel at advocacy group Demand Justice, said in a statement Wednesday, by the way, just to deflect a little bit from this, one thing, thousands of calls to Nancy Pelosi to delay the process through impeachment of Barr or impeachment of Trump, or through invoking the War Powers Act, using the War Powers Act. Taking a vote on that to create a priority for the Senate to take up something else besides the confirmation process, forcing them to delay the confirmation process. that is something Nancy Pelosi can do, except sit there on her hind end and eat designer ice cream and parade around in kente cloth. Christopher Kang, chief counsel at advocacy group Demand Justice, said in a statement Wednesday that, quote, beginning hearings this quickly after a nomination is announced is completely out of line with every other justice on the Supreme Court and even the standards that Senate Republicans have held past Trump nominees to. And more from Kang, as this process becomes even more of a partisan farce, the cloud looming over the legitimacy of the Senate and the Supreme Court itself will continue to grow. And he's right. Who thinks the Supreme Court is now legitimate? Who thinks it's now legitimate? A president who was elected as a non-legitimate president because he lost the popular vote by 3 million votes. People grudgingly acceded to the fact that he did get a majority of the Electoral College votes, so they grudgingly accepted his presidency and have grudgingly watched it get worse for years. But for these people, the Electoral College is not legitimate. The Senate is not very legitimate because of the games that Mitch McConnell has played in the Senate. And the Supreme Court itself is not a legitimate Supreme Court because an illegitimate president got 2 conservative nominees through who had no business getting through, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. Both liars, under oath. Quote, Republican leaders are making clear that a political power grab is more important than seriously vetting the person they want to give a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court, unquote. So, and next, while this is going on, while there is the COVID disaster continuing to burn in the background, and while we have the fiasco of the RBG finagling and the attempted power grab, okay, of the president, okay, and while we also have what's going on here? There we go. Okay, and while we have the obvious angst over Trump and his management of the environment, okay, and the climate, we also have our planet burning, absolutely burning. And let's look at yet another article from Common Dreams. Headline, Planet is Burning, but first presidential debate set to ignore humanity's most pressing issue, the climate. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? The Bobcat fire burns in Juniper Hills, California on September 19th, 2020. Even as devastating wildfires across the U.S. West Coast and rapidly shrinking Arctic sea ice offer alarming evidence of the reality and immediacy of the climate crisis, the planetary emergency was apparently deemed not worthy of inclusion on the list of official topics for next Tuesday's presidential debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Unveiled Tuesday by the Commission on Presidential Debates, the featured topics of the 90-minute event, moderated by Chris Wallace of Fox News, are expected to be the coronavirus pandemic, the economy, the Supreme Court, the 2 candidates' records, election integrity, and race and violence in our cities. According to recent polls, those are not, except for the coronavirus pandemic, those are not among the top 3 issues. The top 3 issues are the pandemic, healthcare, okay, and I've forgotten the 3rd issue, but it is not the economy. The economy is not among the top 3 issues. This is according to a Marist poll, okay, a recent Marist poll. Sorry to forget the top 3 issues. Okay, the 3rd of the top 3 issues. So, okay, the Supreme Court issue is a top of mind issue right now. Okay, it certainly is. But it is not a top kitchen table issue among the American people. No, not. While the topics are subject to change, the initial exclusion of the greatest crisis facing humanity sparked backlash from environmentalists who characterized the ongoing neglect of the climate emergency as yet another dereliction of duty by the corporate media. And Varshini Prakash, executive director of the Sunrise Movement, said in a statement late Tuesday, quote, at a time when wildfires are burning down an entire coast, it's absolutely unconscionable for the media to dismiss climate change as a topic in the first of the presidential debates. The first presidential debate is always the one that has the most viewers. Poll, quote, poll after poll shows, oh, I'm sorry. Of course, the 3rd issue is the climate crisis. The 3 issues of the coronavirus, healthcare, and the climate crisis. There we go. And to dismiss climate change as a topic in the first presidential debate, poll after poll shows the climate crisis looms large on the minds of voters across the country. An NPR survey released yesterday showed it was the single most important issue among Democrats. Young Republican voters also list climate as their top concern, unquote. Prakash said her organization is committed to mobilizing our movement to protest at the presidential debates until Chris Wallace and other mainstream reporters address climate head on. You know, it really is unforgivable. We had very little coverage of the climate crisis during the primary debates, which is probably one reason why Bernie lost in the primaries. They rigged the primary debates to put a minimum amount of time on the climate crisis. So Bernie's program on the climate could not be featured. And so he wouldn't be in a debate with everybody else, with all the deniers who were part of that particular debate. All the other programs, other than Bernie's, were inadequate. So they rigged the primary in that way. The mainstream reporters did that. And now they're rigging it again here by not taking up the climate crisis. Quote, the American people are crying out for a real solution to the crises we find ourselves. She continued, we need to open up conversations around how we can mobilize our government to fight the climate crisis while also creating millions of good jobs in the process of recovering from an economic collapse and global pandemic. It's an abdication of the media's role to keep people informed for climate to be completely erased from the docket. And there are some tweets here, and the topics for the first debate that was selected by Chris Wallace: Trump and Biden records, the Supreme Court, COVID-19, the economy, race and violence in our cities, the integrity of the election. They all are big issues, but they should have expanded the time for the debate to give at least an hour to the climate crisis. At least an hour to the climate crisis. Throughout his first term, Trump repeatedly dismissed or downplayed the climate emergency and contributed to it by gutting basic environmental protections. You see, the debate is automatically biased. The first debate is automatically biased towards Trump by not taking up the climate crisis. They biased it towards Trump just by not including climate in there. Going on, it contributed to it by gutting basic environmental protections and rushing to expand domestic fuel production at a time when rapid planetary warming demands an urgent transition away from polluting energy sources. Biden, for his part, put forth the $2 trillion green energy plan in July. The climate group said is a good first step, but ultimately insufficient to deliver the needed transformational change. Of course it is. Biden slammed the president's ongoing denial of the climate in the face of catastrophic wildfires in California, Oregon, and Washington state, and said that, quote, in the years ahead, there will be no challenge more consequential to our future than meeting and defeating the onrushing climate crisis. Well, act like it, then, Biden. Repudiate your own plan and just adopt Bernie's plan wholesale. Quote, the science is clear, and deadly signs like these are unmistakable. Climate change poses an imminent existential threat to our way of life, Biden said in a statement. And quote again, President Trump can try to deny that reality, but the facts are undeniable. They are undeniable, Joe. And because they're undeniable, it's quite clear that your $2 trillion program over 4 years is not enough to handle the existential threat to our way of life. We absolutely must act now to avoid a future defined by an unending barrage of tragedies like the one American families are enduring across the West today, unquote. Despite the marked contrast between the two candidates on climate policy, it is unclear whether their differences will receive any attention or discussion at next Tuesday's debate, which will come less than 40 days ahead of the November 3rd election. Evan Weber, co-founder and political director of the Sunrise Movement, tweeted Tuesday that if Wallace fails to mention the climate emergency in his questions, Biden must bring up the topic on his own. Quote, polling shows it's the biggest wedge he's got, said Weber. And quote again, it's just smart politics, unquote. Weber, of course, is dead right about that. It's just smart politics. And a majority of the American people are very, very concerned about it. Very, very concerned. So, we now get to our final article that we'll cover tonight. And that's from Julia Conley, another staff writer at Common Dreams, published again today. Even as major politicians continue to drag their feet, polls shows the majority in the U.S. want bold climate action and the end of fossil fuels, which has got to be a surprise to some of the Republicans. Let me share that for you. New polling suggests a majority of Americans are likely to be dissatisfied with the subject matter included in the first presidential debate next week, in which, according to a list of topics released Tuesday, President Donald Trump and Democratic candidate Joe Biden will be asked no questions about the climate. A survey released Wednesday by The Guardian, Vice Media Group, Covering Climate Now, the Yale Program on Climate Change Communication, the George Mason University Center for Climate Change, communication found that nearly 3/4 of U.S. respondents believe moderators of the debates should ask candidates about the climate, matching voters' level of concern about the planetary crisis. 3/4 of U.S. respondents, 75%, think this should be in the debate, but Chris Wallace thought he knew better. A debate focusing on the crisis could allow voters to hear about his candidate's views on shifting away from fossil fuel generated energy and towards renewable sources like wind and solar power. 3/4 of respondents to the survey said they want all electricity in the U.S. to come from renewable sources in the next 15 years, and 2/3 said they would be more likely to back a candidate who supports a full shift towards clean energy. Biden has said that as president, he would put the U.S. on a path to driving fossil fuel emissions to net zero by 2050, while Trump has saddled the solar and wind industries with burdens, economic burdens, demanding $50 million in retroactive fees earlier this year as his administration lavished oil and gas giants with bailouts amid the coronavirus pandemic. And there are people who really believe Biden would not be better on this. I mean, I don't think he'd be great, but he wouldn't be doing this.
Can they make it to 2050?
No, we can't make it to 2050. We've got to have this done by 2030. By 2030. And we got to start now with something that's at least reasonable so we can increase the momentum of that thing as we go along. While Biden's climate proposals are more in line with the demands of American voters, the former vice president is also suggesting that decisive climate action is controversial among the electorate. What does controversial mean? What does that mean? 75% in this survey said they're more inclined to vote for a candidate who wants it. Controversial among 25% of the crazies in this country? What is Biden talking about? What does controversial mean? It's not about what is controversial. It's about what we have to do to save the climate. Last month, he told voters that he is, quote, not banning fracking, no matter how many times Donald Trump lies about me, unquote. The Democratic Party also left out of its platform this year a pledge to end fossil fuel subsidies. The DNC, totally corrupt DNC. They wanted to continue taking contributions from the oil industry. That's what it was about. These moves by Democratic leaders put the party at odds with most voters, the new polling shows, as 7 in 10 Americans favor government action to combat the climate crisis. That's only going to get worse between this year and the time Biden gets into office. That's going to be 8 out of 10. That's going to be 8 out of 10. More than 8 in 10 Democratic voters support the Green New Deal now. The far-reaching green jobs and infrastructure program, which would aim to shift the U.S. to renewable energy sources by 2030. That's why Biden didn't want to embrace the Green New Deal. He wants to keep the donor money flowing from the oil industry. Even a majority of Republican respondents to the survey also reported they believe the climate crisis is a very serious, or somewhat serious problem, and 41% of Republicans supported the Green New Deal, despite claims by GOP leaders that a major investment in renewable energy would be too expensive. Okay, so you get the picture. Claims about swing state voters who reject a Democratic candidate who vows to take meaningful climate action including a fracking ban and a shift away from oil and gas, is, quote, just another narrative to manufacture consent, tweeted climate scientist Peter Kalmus earlier this month, pointing to a CBS YouGov poll that showed a majority of Pennsylvania voters back a ban on fracking. Peter Kalmus says, fuck all the pundits who say, quote, Biden can't say he'll ban fracking because he'll lose Pennsylvania, unquote, even as our planet burns and melts in real time. It's just another narrative to manufacture consent. A majority of Pennsylvanians oppose fracking. Claims by politicians that climate action would bankrupt the U.S. are part of, quote, an argument that doesn't work, unquote. John Krosnick, a Stanford social psychologist, professor, who authored a separate study out Wednesday, told Time, quote, the argument has never convinced even a majority of Republicans, unquote. Of course, that argument is entirely opposed to MMT. People who know about MMT know that we can afford what we have to afford. There isn't any problem because we're a monetary sovereign. There's no problem in coming up with the money. The only problem is in coming up with the resources. Right now, we don't have a problem in coming up with the resources. If we begin to have a problem in that way, we can manage it at that time. Right now, we've got to get started to taming climate change immediately, because we've done almost nothing about that. Wednesday's survey comes as the West Coast continues to face dozens of major wildfires, with at least 1,000 homes in California currently threatened and thousands of homes in Oregon and Washington destroyed in recent weeks. As Common Dreams reported Tuesday, Arctic sea ice shrank this week to its second lowest level since records began more than 4 decades ago. The poll also comes 2 years after a landmark report by the IPCC warned that the global community has a decade to significantly alter course by keeping fossil fuels in the ground in order to avoid the worst effects of the climate crisis. And so that's it. Okay, what do we have here? We have escalating rage over the electoral situation. Trump, is manipulating and moving the situation, to deny the remedy for dissatisfaction that we have always had in this particular republic. That remedy has been to get rid of the president who is performing in an unsatisfactory way. We have always at least had that remedy. The elites may have been able to manipulate our choices, but they've never been able to take away the possibility of taking out the president who's really, really pissed us off. Trump is proposing to do that. He is proposing to take away our choice to get rid of him, to vote against him. We already don't have the choice to vote for the person we want, but Trump wants to go one step further and remove from us the freedom to vote against the person we definitely don't want, who's a danger to our very continuing existence, our continuing existence as a people, our continuing individual existence because of the danger from COVID, our continuing economic existence because of the imminent collapse of the U.S. economy due to COVID and the effects of COVID and the lack of relief And by the way, why is there a lack of relief at this point? Because Nancy Pelosi never forced the Republicans, along with Chuck Schumer, of course, but more due to Nancy Pelosi, who held the whip hand at the time of the CARES Act, with Mitch McConnell needing a bailout for the big corporations and wanting that bailout for the big corporations. Nancy Pelosi caved and would not see to it that relief was there for the American people for the duration of the coronavirus. And why do you suppose she did not provide for that? Because even while she was willing to appropriate $2.2 trillion for the CARES Act, she still had in the back of her mind, pay go, pay go, pay go. And she was afraid that if she specified the relief for the full period of the coronavirus, the amount spent would total up to a deficit so large that she wouldn't be able to handle it through pay-go at all, that pay-go would be totally dead. She didn't make that move at the start because of her pay-go nonsense. I'm sure of it. I'm sure Pelosi sabotaged relief for the whole American people because of her stupid, erroneous, dogmatic ideology. She needs to get out. She needs to get out. There's no way she should be speaker again. She's screwing this up now. She's screwing this up now with respect to the RBG thing. She has moves she can make to freeze the Republicans in their tracks. She is in favor of a clean continuing resolution bill when she can hold the CR bill over the heads of the Republicans. The Republicans need the CR bill right now. They need it right now. Why isn't Nancy Pelosi saying no CR bill until there's a relief bill? We need a relief bill first. We've agreed to come down by $1 trillion. You have not met us halfway. You will meet us halfway now, or there will be no CR, and the government will be shut down. And it will be Trump's fault because he never led you to make a compromise. He never led you to provide for relief for the American people. So,
I read today that he canceled food subsidies.
He canceled SNAP. Food subsidies are down to zero. They were never renewed. Why? Because that mean bastard won't even do the minimum. That totally mean bastard needs to be booted out of the White House. We shouldn't even wait for the election. He should be impeached right now. And what's up with that? She could have impeached him on 20 other things, and she screwed that up. She needs to resign right now. She's a disaster. We need someone with guts and brains in there right now. Somebody like Jayapal. Somebody like AOC. Nancy Pelosi stinks. I mean, probably Ocasio-Cortez couldn't be pushed through. But Jayapal probably could be, and she'd be awfully tough. Anyway, turning to your comments. And Avro said, sound is great, no white noise. I got a lot of white noise at this end. I'm glad it's not coming through. It's probably my fan. Carmen says, let me get my granola ready. I always have to nervous snack to deal with topics. Okay, shared. Kay says, was watching a town hall on Medicare for All, a great bunch on there. Yeah, I was supposed to go to that, but I got too much accumulated I had to take care of today. Because I had to go out for a while today. There's too much accumulated. I couldn't go to the Medicare for All town hall. I really wanted to go to that. But it was at 8. It's an awkward time for getting ready for the show. Carmen says, oh, speaking of Florida, Matt Gaetz is trying to get Bloomberg prosecuted for donating $5 million to the Felon Voting Rights Restoration Coalition. How can he get Bloomberg prosecuted for that? How can he get him prosecuted for it? I mean, if he contributed the money to a PAC, he can't get him prosecuted for that. I mean, Gaetz is crazy. Matt Gaetz is a nutcase. He really is. A loudmouth nutcase. Carmen Muniz says, can't get my fat hand in the snack bag fast enough. Steve DeVore says, I think the Green Party should be the leaders of the environmental issues and what's right and good for the American people. Yet they're nothing like that. They always seem to be chasing their tail politically. Well, it's because they too have an establishment. It's the iron law of oligarchy. The Green Party was taken over by a small minority a long time ago. Why? Because the small minority were the first people to come into the party and stick with it, and they made a lot of sacrifices. So they entrenched their position also. So when new people come to the Green Party, they can't get the Green Party moving. So they're discouraged. They drop out of the Green Party. That's been the problem with the Green Party. Some of us came to them in 2018 with the MMT point of view, tried to make minor changes in their platform so that it would be MMT consistent. Now, it would also be consistent with the AMI position. We weren't trying to put a knife in the AMI position. We just wanted the language to be such that it would also be consistent with MMT. We couldn't get those changes through. People in the Green Party who'd been there for a long time just insisted that taxes paid for spending. They had to have something in there that implied that taxes paid for government spending. Terrible. I put in a lot of work on that too. And I got nowhere with it because they got a bunch of nutties in there. Anyway, Kay says, hey, Evelina. And Evelina says, hi, Kay. Was watching the town hall about Medicare for All. Kay says, me too. Very good bunch there. Carmen says, but the DNC will blame it on the Greens. Betcha Cat. Yeah, they'll blame it on the Greens. They'll blame it on us. They'll blame it on the Bernies. They'll burn it on the Greens. They'll blame it on the progressives. They'll blame it on everybody but themselves. That's why they must go. They're incapable of learning because they'll never admit their mistakes. If you're going to learn from error, you have to admit you made an error. You have to admit it to yourself. You have to take it into an organization. Oh, we were in error. We have to learn from our errors. The DNC cannot adapt. They're incapable of adapting. I mean, yeah, they've adapted to allow themselves to survive through this period, but they've not adapted to help the United States survive. In that way, they've been as bad as the Republicans. As a political party, their charge is not only to help themselves survive, it's to help their country survive. And at that, the DNC has been a miserable failure, as has, of course, the RNC, another miserable failure. Kay says, sometimes I think Biden was drafted to run and never really expected or wanted to run. Deborah says, you're right on, Joe. So much indignation at the DNC's fuckery. And Kay said, they will blame the progressives too, Avril. Alva says, I think the DNC once again underestimated Trump and thought Biden would just slip right in because tangerine tinted tyrant is so bad, quote unquote. But they underestimate the intelligence of his fanatical, rabid, racist the base. The intelligence of the base, or the persistence and the fanaticism of that base. I have to say, I'm not too certain about their intelligence. Avro says, we're ready. Kay says, I agree, Avro. They don't stand to lose much anyway as they keep the tax breaks in power no matter who wins. That's why they've got to be gotten rid of. Because if people don't stand to lose much, they don't fight hard. Whenever you get people working for you who don't stand to lose much from losing, they will lose. Avro says, I wonder if any of the celebrities like Oprah are actually going to raise some hell over the Breonna Taylor execution and injustice. I don't know, but that is outrageous. That nobody is being prosecuted for that is outrageous. Kay says, John Legend is also donating money to help past felons to vote in Florida. Haven't heard a peep from Dopra. Lost all respect for her years ago. And Carmen says, Biden said that, quote, I beat the socialists, quote, to pander to the Cuban vote. That's true. Alvaro says, the only pressure Biden feels are from his dentures as he lies and backstabs Bernie. God. Harry Engel says, Wisconsin progressives will Biden. Jim Bird said, there isn't a world where I reward Biden and the DNC syndicate. It's not about rewarding Biden or rewarding a DNC syndicate. I know it may seem that way, but it's really about rewarding Trump. Are you going to reward Trump for the horrors of his first 4 years in office? Are you going to reward him? If you don't vote against Trump, you will reward him. If you're not in a safe state and you vote third party, you will be rewarding Trump, I'm afraid. If you want to do that, I mean, that's okay. I believe everybody's vote is a matter of their conscience, okay, and what appeals to them. But do it after thinking about it. Don't do it completely out of anger. Just consider it. Make a decision that's cold and fits with your conscience. And I'll be the last person to question that. Alvaro Romano says, anybody else gaining weight from self-quarantining and sleeping? Well, actually, it's kind of strange. We've been on this, it's a pretty vegan diet. It's not completely vegan, but okay, it's pretty close. And we've learned to eat less than we were previously eating.
First, use a smaller plate.
Yeah, we've been using a smaller plate, and we've acclimated over time. And over time, I've been slowly losing weight.
And you stop when you're comfortable.
Yeah, Bonnie tells me stop when I'm comfortable. I mean, but usually, I do it myself. After I finish my plate, I finished it. I don't take any more. I just stop. Okay, I put it aside. Okay, and I have a cup of tea. Bonnie has a cup of coffee. And that bar, I hate him as much as DT.
Yeah.
I kind of hate him really, really, really bad because he's a coldly rational fascist. Trump is just this emotional, angry, id-driven guy. I mean, Barr seems like he thinks his way through to cruelty. Romano says COVID will surge as air gets drier. Yeah, it's said to be surging now, but fatalities have not surged yet. But the number of cases are definitely surging. The second wave is definitely here as it turns colder. That has happened. Kay says, I try to get out for a few walks every day to keep my weight down and keep my junk knees moving. Also eating less. I've never been a napper. I've never been a napper either. The body naps a little, but not really that much. Avril says, if I didn't get the migraines, I wouldn't nap as much either. And Avril says, I don't see where you see that DT is losing. Well, in terms of the polls, there are lots of races that are very close. And the polls could be wrong. And in yesterday's live stream, I went over Nathan Robinson's argument, which I agree with. We have to act as though Biden, is losing. But and that's because of the risk involved, in case Donald Trump is actually not losing. But from the standpoint of the evidence, that's out there, it does seem to me that Donald Trump is losing. That doesn't mean that he's going to lose. But in many states, the margin is large. It's appreciable. It's outside of the margin, of error. And even when it's inside of the margin, if you line up the states where Biden has a lead that's inside the margin, of error, in all those states, things are in the same direction. They're toward Biden. And many of them were red states last time. I mean, what is Trump doing in a tie with Biden in Iowa? I mean, he won Iowa last time by 9 points. He's losing in Wisconsin now. He's losing in Minnesota now. He's losing in Michigan now. The margin is too tight, in Pennsylvania. That's a surprise, right now. There are many states also where these Republican senators who aren't supposed to be on the bubble at all are on the bubble. I've already gone through 10 states, 13 states, these people are on the bubble. I mean, it's ridiculous. The Democrats could pick up 8 seats. Kay says, I understand that. My youngest daughter gets those too. Avril says that vacancy chick is a Federalist. You mean Amy Coney Barrett? Yeah, I think she is. Avril says that's the Goebbels game plan. Accuse the other side. The Goebbels game plan. Accuse the other side. Yeah, it's the Karl Rove game plan too. You always accuse the other side of what you're guilty of. Avril says, can't you drop the mail and ballots off at local voting registrar's office? I heard you can. Well, where we voted today was at the registrar's office. We actually went to the registrar's office in our county, and that's where they were holding the early voting. Kay says, curbside voting is very good. Wish this backward state would try something new for a change. Virginia has been really rather progressive in certain ways, like in the good government ways, or the clean government ways.
Protecting children.
They seem to be pretty good. Are they good when it comes to protecting children?
Yeah, they're trying. Well, they're listening to teachers and families about virtual or in school.
Yeah, they're good on suburbanite types of issues here. I think this is rapidly becoming the quintessential suburban state where everything is suburban. There are no urbans here. There are only suburbans. Of course, if there are suburbans, they have to be urbans. But you get the picture. The whole of Northern Virginia is made up of suburbs of Washington, D.C. There are no big cities here other than Washington, D.C. It's all suburbanized. So suburban voters, suburban lifestyle, kind of an idiot style of centrism here when it comes to economic issues, okay, when it comes to class issues, very, very backward. But when it comes to social issues, identity politics issues, very progressive. When it comes to children's issues, very progressive. So that's what they have here. When it comes to good government issues, like giving everybody a chance to vote, they're very good. The Dems aren't trying to rig the votes here. They're trying to prevent the gerrymander now. Howard said, "Did you guys see the vast list of Democrats going along with Agolf's SCOTUS pick?" No. Who are the Democrats going along with Agolf's SCOTUS pick? Probably Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, the famous Joe Manchin.
What is that?
Huh?
What is that?
Sorry, what is what?
What you just said.
Joe Manchin?
No, that thing that she's talking about. Never mind.
What she's talking about is Trump's the SCOTUS pick.
Oh, okay.
Carmen refers to Trump, okay, as Agolf Twitler. Okay, that's the nickname.
I call him Fart Face.
Yes, we know you do. Stephanie Smith-Udy says, "Yep." And Avril says, Stephanie Smith-Udy Duckworth, of all people. Tammy Duckworth is going along with Trump's pick.
Mm-hmm.
Is she out of her mind?
Yes. Needs to go.
She needs to go. That means she needs to go. Next time she's up, she needs to go. Carmen says, arrows in her quivers just means designer ice cream in her elitist, overpriced fridges. Stephanie Smith-Udy says, RBG was an icon. Yeah, she was a great gal, too. And Kay says, I hate Pegosi. Hope Buttar beats her. Bit looking iffy at this point, sadly. Yeah, it is looking iffy. And Kay says, they will never replace RBG. Kay says, Rump was impeached even though the Senate would not kick him out. I think that should be enough to not let him run for re-election, don't you? Unfortunately, those are not the rules. Avril said, just saw an interesting headline by Politico. Trump is an authoritarian. So are millions of Americans. By reading that ASAP. Yes, that's been known for a long time. There's a lot of polling data on that. There have been a lot of psychological tests on that. A lot of Americans are authoritarians. That's why Trump still has a sizable base. He's still not under a 40% approval rating. I mean, you would have thought by now, with all the crap that he's done, that he would be at 28%. But no.
Weren't the Republicans supposed to be a nation, Republicans that respected the law? What happened to that?
What happened to the Republicans respecting the law? One nation under law.
Yeah.
They never respected the law. It was always for other people. It was never for them. Kay says that the first debate is up here in Cleveland, Ohio. Shake my head. Avril says, election. Annie Voorhees says, voting green. Okay, Annie. Avril says, I'm not sending laughing emojis. Something else is doing that. And Kay says, under Kasich, fracking has ruined Ohio, and the Ohio River is now the most polluted river in the country. So we cannot anymore go down by the banks of the Ohio, right? Of course, mainstream reporters aren't concerned with global warming. They sit in the air conditioning all day. Avromano says, why is the media biased towards Trump or thin skin? Other than by neoliberalism. Well, the media probably wants a close race. It raises their ratings. They probably want to have a closer race. If the race drags on until January, the media will make a fortune. They'll make a fortune. Maybe the media wants to make it drag on until January. It's good for business. Fox probably wants Trump to win. They probably think that's good for their business. Kay says he makes them tons of money. Avril says, right. So it's neoliberalism then. Kay says, corporate monopoly in the news business, Avril. Avril says, so are pro-DNC CIA operators. Kay says, same as phone news, just different owners. Evelina Pon says, to think the fires will be a permanent feature is very distressing. Other extreme weather events also. We can only slow down what's been set into motion, and only if we act now. Evelina says, I don't think I'm exaggerating. I don't think you are either, Evelina. Kay said, I used to be a big MSNBC watcher until they had a corporate takeover back in 2015, 2016. Got rid of their truly progressive hosts and replaced them with GOP ones. Gee, I thought they did that back in 2003 at the time of the Iraq War. They got rid of, Donahue, okay, and other people back then, and they made everybody aware that if people didn't behave themselves, they were going to be replaced.
And they did it.
Of course, Keith Olbermann and Ed Schultz did not behave themselves. And so they got cut out. Avril says, I hear cutting out meat will help the climate. Will help the climate more than anything. Thoughts? Well, my thoughts are that's supposed to be the case. I suppose it really comes down to what we're going to substitute for meat and what kinds of carbon emissions that shift from meat to something else is going to cause. Kay says, it will help out, but that's if we get rid of big ag. Yes, I think that's right, Kay. Avril says, I like fruits and vegetables better. Anyway, yeah, so do we at this point. Kay says, we need to go back to organic family farms. Yes, we do. Most of what we're eating now is organic stuff. We're getting pretty careful about it. And Evelina says, I think you need to do more research. Cows are only one aspect. That's right. Rebecca McClaskey says, sustainable farming is the key for that to happen. We must either get rid of big ag or regulate it. Avril says, what else besides fossil fuels, in your opinion, or expertise? Fossil fuels is number one, Evelina says. I agree. Something as simple as leaving the harvested plant in the field till next spring makes an impact. Well, planting trees is very, very, very important. The Terraton Initiative, you ought to look that up. And Rebecca McClaskey says it's for animal product practices. Factory farms must go, be better for animals and the environment to range the animals. Oh, by the way, growing hemp is very, very helpful too. outlawing GMOs would help big time too. Alvaro says, I read Adolf Hitler doesn't want to leave the White House because he doesn't want to face lawsuits and prosecution once he leaves office. And Barr will guarantee his protection as long as he's in office. Yes, I've read that too, and I believe it. And Rebecca McCloskey says, but GMOs can be good. Insect damage control is good, as well as increasing production. But non-seed producing is a manipulative market monopoly control. So again, the regulation and what they can do and what they can't. Avril says, Hulk is on. GMOs poison out food too. Avril says, not always. And Rebecca says, did you see Pelosi's glitch on the Sunday morning show with Stephanopoulos? Oh my God, what a disaster. Yeah, that was really a glitch. She looked like she was rebooting. She needed a reboot. Kay says, organic sustainable farming is the only way to go. Avril said, no, I didn't know. Avril says, I scrolled down too fast. No, I didn't know about it till now. And Rebecca says, she sounded like a robot that had to be rebooted. And Stephanie Smith-Udy said, exactly, Dr. Joe. And Rebecca McCloskey said, Shahed Buttar. And Kay said, I'm a master gardener and I know the deal. Avril says, Nancy is a drunk. Evelina said, ha ha. Hi, Bonnie, you're Dr. Joe's Ed McMahon. No, Bonnie is my muse. Carmen says, Green Party spurned real progressives. I was pissy mad at their arrogance. Yes, they did spurn us. That's right. That was when I was with real progressives, as a matter of fact. Steve says, the military trucks are moving in. Kentucky, I don't know. D.C., I don't know. I haven't seen any moving in here. Haven't heard of any moving in here right now. And Avril says, plays right into fascist Herr Fuhrer's hands. And Steve says, second officer shot in Louisville. Yeah, Louisville is probably up in arms because they refuse to prosecute anybody. Kay says, where are you seeing that, Steve? Avril says, I'm on a diet too. It's called poverty. Steve Gonzo says, the D.C. Civil Disturbance Unit is here. They funneled the march towards the Columbia Heights. Oh, wow. Is there a civil disturbance, Kay, in D.C. now? Or are they just making a show of force for the gratification of Donald J. Trump? Kay says, are you seeing that? Kay, on MSM, Steve Gonzo. And Rebecca says, the Democrats could pick up 8 seats, but then they would have to govern. I think they enjoy being the opposition party because that is what provides their identity, politic election arguments to keep their seats. I don't think they want to be the opposition party in the Senate anymore. I really don't. Not for a while. Alva says, okay, thanks, Dr. Joe, for putting me back on focus just when things seem hopeless. Alva says, great point. Steve says, the Louisville police giving armed MAGA militia members directions on where to stand, what to expect, which streets to avoid. So collaboration between the fascist militia and the Louisville police. Just what I'd expect. Avril asks whether Richmond isn't a big city in Virginia. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty big city, but it's not, a very big city. What's the population, of Richmond? 500,000, something like that, in the city itself. 250,000 maybe in the city itself. If you include the metropolitan area, but of course, the metropolitan area, of Richmond has suburbs, right? It's, a lot of suburbs in I'm not sure what the population of the city of Richmond is itself. I'd be surprised if it's more than 300,000. Marvel says, yes, Duckworth. And Stephanie says, great show tonight. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you for coming, Stephanie. Thank you for sharing. Marvel says, night, sunflower love. And Kay says, the dumbing down of America has worked way too well. Steve says, GSP accidentally tear gassed themselves. Protests all over Denver being met with heavily militarized PO posers. What are PO posers? Alvaro says, sadists looking for sadistic supply. And Kay says, Donahue was the first to go. Junk had a show on there. Yes, he did, along with Ed Schultz and Keith Olbermann and Dylan Ratigan. Yeah, they all got purged around, 2011, 2012, or some time in there. And Steve said, protest videos all over Twitter. And Dolores Pierce says, good night, love. Good night to everyone. I'm at the end now. Thank you for coming. Good night to all. Thank you for sharing. I'll see you tomorrow night. Bonnie says good night also. Ending the broadcast.